this is the card that I'll be doing today, although a variation of this card. I'll not be using the wings as I have done on here. These are made out of wet vellum, and I used a sparkle overlay on them, and I think that might be why they've curled up, which I'm not very happy about. I also don't like the fact that you can see the wings underneath, which I didn't forward plan enough. So I am going to replicate this without the wings, and hopefully I'll be painting the wings in. So for that, I'll be using the Time Tunnel stencil from Visible Image. Also from Visible Image, Enchanted Fairy. And lastly from the same brand, Rays of Light. So I'll be using all of those together to get our finished look. So I'm going to move that out of the way. So to start off with, I've cut my panels down. So we're working with an A6 side fold again. And I've cut down a piece of black card, which is about 3mm smaller around each edge. And then a piece of white super smooth. It's a 300 GSM, and again that's 2 to 3mm, around 3mm smaller around each side of the black. So I'll pop the black and the card aside, and I'll bring in my ink. For this first stage, I'll be using peacock feathers and salvaged patina, and they'll be the base of the background using the stencil. So I'm just looking for my messy mat. So I'm going to place the centre of the stencil centrally on my card, as best I can anyway. I'm just going to bring in my tools. Actually, I'm just turning that additional light on. I don't know if that's made much of a difference. Okay, so the first one, doesn't really matter which colour to go with first. I'm going with peacock feathers. That happens every time. There we go. So I'm going to position that stencil so that the top edge is not overlapping the card, i.e. so that the swirls fade off the card. And actually that's now off centre. There we go. And then I'm just going to go in. It comes out, my peacock feathers is really juicy, and when it's this juicy it looks very green, but we'll tone that down in one of the later steps. So just so that the stencil doesn't move as I'm applying the ink, I'm trying to follow it like that. See, I'm trying to follow it in the same direction as the swirls moving. Okay, so you can see that I had more ink up here, and it's gone on a lot heavier up here than it has at the bottom. Okay, so that's the first stage. And then I'm just going to give that stencil a little wipe over. Doesn't matter too much for the purpose of the card, but I don't really want it contaminating my ink pad or the blending tool. So I'm going to bring that in, keeping them both in the same position. And now I'm going to bring in the salvage patina. But what I'm going to do is turn the stencil so that now the swirls, if I could pick it up, so that now the swirls, so that's where we were left. And I'm going to turn it ever so slightly so that the swirls now cover the ink that we have already put down. So it's never going to be exact, but that's fine. Just roughly. And that should do me. So I'll bring in my ink now and just fill in those white areas, and that tidies any rough edges that we got from the swirls previously. So the straight edge does cut off here. It does cut the card off here, but that's fine. I'm just going to carry on because I'm going to be playing with those corners anyway, so it's not going to be too visible. And as before, I'm just taking the ink in the same direction as the swirls. Just it's almost a better way of ensuring that the stencil doesn't lift up as we're working. So I'm not going on too dark, just giving what the ink pad gives me. Just going in with that corner there, and that's what we're left with. So I'm going to use that same salvage patina, and all I'm going to do is cover it, fill in the white areas. So I'm just going to get something for my fingers, so we're not leaving inky prints. So I'm going to fill that in there, and there. They're the most obvious ones, and then we do have some white lines. So I'm just going to fill those in also, because the lightest colour going over the dark doesn't make it such a huge impact. It doesn't show dreadfully. It just mutes the darker colour ever so slightly. And I think for me that'll do. So I'm going to darken or add more blue to those edges. So for that I'm going to use the Mermaid Lagoon. Excuse me one moment. Okay, sorry, I'm a bit sniffly. Okay, let's get rid of that one. So Mermaid Lagoon going in. And all I'm doing is going around the edges. You've seen me do this plenty of times, but this really does add an extra layer of blue to the card. Not going all the way in, just about an inch of the edge. And lastly, there we go. So you can see it's really picked up on the lightest of the two colours, the salvage patina, around those swirls, around the edge. But it's not affected the peacock feathers too much. Right, so the next thing I'll do is I'll stamp the fairy. So I'll give this a blast with my heat tool first. Just to see if we can dry some of that ink up. And then I'll bring in my stamping platform. I'm just going to use my anti-static on there, just for some extra safe measures to prevent embossing powder sticking, because I will be embossing this. Okay, just positioning this somewhere central. Just waiting for my tablet to catch up so that I can see that where I've placed this, you can see what I'm doing. I I think that's probably more like it. And for this one, I'm going to be using the Enchanted Fairy and the main image at the moment in that stamp set. So just going to place that centrally, ensuring that it's straight. So to do that, I'm going to pick it up with my tool. That'll do. That'll do nicely. Just drop something. Okay. So I'll be using some VersaFine Onyx Black. Oops. So I'm using, whenever I'm using a larger stamp or a silhouette stamp, I like to use my stamping tool so that I can get that. I've got the opportunity then to go in a second time should I need to, because 9 times out of 10 with these sort of stamps, that is the case. I hate this part. It really plays havoc on the hands and the wrists. So pulling away carefully, because it will want to pull the card away with it, and then when you go back in again, it won't, you'll get a double impression. So that's better. I just moved my water jar, which I'll be using in a moment. And just going in that second time. Again, being careful not to lift the card up with it. And I'm going to go in one last time just to do the body of the fairy. And then maybe I'll give a, it's me not giving a good enough impression. I just don't have the strength in my hands. Okay, and I think that will do. That looks like it's actually lifted some of the ink off there. But I can't afford to go in a third time because the card moved there. So we'll leave it as it is. I'll put that aside. And what I might do is just go in with an embossing pen and just fill those dark areas in, which haven't quite taken. But I'm going to move quite quickly because I need to add the powder. And then we'll set to emboss that. So just a black embossing powder for that. No, we don't want black. I wanted white. That was the whole purpose of a, not white, clear, goodness me. I don't want to risk using the black and it going in all over the card, so clear. Although I have prepared it, you can never prepare these things enough. If these things are going to happen, they're going to happen. So, that's better. and then we'll go and heat set it. So you can't really see where I use the black. It is good having the side-by-side comparison though, because the black is a much deeper black with black embossing powder than with the clear. So for a sharper image, black appears to be the way to go. But I don't want to take the chance. There we go. So that's our fairy. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is paint in the wings. Just deciding what I wanted to do next there, but I will do the wings next. So for that, I'll bring back in my messy mat. I'm going to bring back in my Mermaid Lagoon, and then I'll bring in a stamping block. So I'm just going to place some of that ink down onto my stamping block, give it a spritz, and then I'll attempt to paint this without lifting all the card away. So the beautiful thing is where I've embossed it, it resists the paint, so it's really quick and easy just to paint those wings in. Now you can see the wings still through the paint, but you can also see where there's a blue tone now to it which wasn't there before. What I'll do is I'll dry this layer off and go in with a second layer. But I shan't be too salty if it doesn't go as blue as I'd first expected, because the wings are going to be transparent, aren't they? So to see some of the background is actually to be quite expected. So I'm just going to loosely put down another layer, then I'll dry that off and then give it another layer. It dries very quickly anyway, and we don't want to give it too many layers because then it starts breaking the cards down. So I'll go in a second time. So it's quite, it likes to trick you because when the paint first goes down, it appears as though they're not too see-through, transparent. But as it dries, you can see the background starting to peep through again. But I'm happy with that, actually. So I'm just going to move my water somewhere where I'm not going to spill it. And I'll blast that off again with the heat tool. Oh, I've got some water there. Not too sure how I managed that, but it's all good. I'll see if I can cover that up with something in a little while. So the next thing I did was I went in with, let's clear this off first. Get this out of our way so that we don't make a mess. I'll clean that properly later. The next thing was to go in with the rays of light, and we're going to stamp those in peacock feathers this time. So I'll use the largest of those rays. I think I just about got away with a stamp block before. Yeah. And we're just going to go in and pick up some of the untouched areas. So we'll put one, try not to overlap the image as well. So put one here, and then one over here. We could afford to get away with doing that again down there, I think. And then let's go with up here. Now, these pigment inks stay wet, or stay, yeah, for a fair amount of time. You get some give on them. So what I'm going to do is just add some clear embossing powder. It won't take to the whole image that I've of the rays, but I quite liked the dappled effect of where it did stick to just some parts. So just going back in with the clear embossing powder in the order that I did them, because it's actually stuck to quite a lot of it this time. Yeah, as I was saying, going in the order that I stamped them in, because they'll dry in that time as well, in that order. Just going to get a drink. Right, so I'm going to heat set those. That's where we're looking now. Right, let's clean that off. Put that away. And then I'll come back in with some of the accessory pieces from the Angel stamp set. Fairy stamp set, not Angel. I suspect I probably said that a couple of times. Right, so we'll bring that back in. And we'll go with these little stars and dots down here. And I used a different embossing powder for this. I used one with a little bit of sparkle. So this was the one. So this is the Wow Clear Sparkle. So I'll just go in with some clear embossing powder. embossing ink. So it's not my usual one, but it's the first one that came to hand. And I don't see that there's much of a difference, honestly. So I'm just going to fill in some gaps with this. So I'm going to put some here. And then I'll put some over here. And then I think just one more actually will be fine. And we'll go here. And then I'll close that up. And if I can find, there we go. And I'll emboss those areas. So nothing there. It's remembering where I stamped. So up here, and then over here. So I'm just going to take off some of that where it's clung in some areas but it's not supposed to. I'm working a bit off camera today, I think. That's a really pretty embossing powder, that one. So again, heat set those. And you can really see it twinkling away. Very pretty. So the next thing I'll do is go in with some of the bubbles from that same set. So let's pop this one away. And here are the bubbles. Bring them in. And I'll not be embossing these, I'm just going to stamp them in black. So I may put some extra in here because that blemish there. Let me put okay, so I'll put a couple like over here just because of that little blemish, and then we'll work on the corners opposite to each other. So let's go here. And these bubbles just echo what's already in the stamp, the stamped image. So just doing the same up the top. There. It doesn't matter if any of them bubbles overlap because some of them in the image are overlapped anyway. So we've just got the two opposite corners now. Let's pop that away. It's tidy up after myself because I don't want anything getting spoilt. Right, so we've got our bubbles, and then next thing I'll do is stamp in the sentiments. Not sentiments as such in this case, just words, but relevant nonetheless. So we're going to go with, that was from the same stamp set, so this is Enchanted. So that will go up the top. Again, I won't be embossing this. And I'm just going to hope that I get it straight. So that's top left. And if it wasn't straight, it's too late now. And actually, that's the best I'm going to get it. So that's great. And then there was also one on the other stamp set. So this was the Rays of Light, and I'm going to go with Sparkle to the bottom right. So again, just inking it up with just some black. And hoping that I get that straight. This does go over the sparkly embossing powder, but it kind of adds to the effect. So the embossing powder acts as a resist, but it just suits the card. Right, and then what I'm going to do is just add in some white detail using a gel pen. So I'll go with a number 8. That's a standard for me. Just make sure that's working. Yep. And all I'll do is I'll add some veins to the wings, just really loosely flicking them in there. And then just wiping it away where it goes over the black. There we go. And then as before, just really loosely flicking those on there. I don't want them to be too dark, too bright or too solid. And then I'll give some highlight to each of the balls or bubbles or orbs, whatever they are. Just picking out approximately a third or so and just adding some highlight there. So therapeutic. I've done some smudging over here, but that's okay. I won't lose sleep over it. Something obviously wasn't set and I've dragged my hand through it. The perks of being a lefty, right? What I might do is just add, where there's smudges, just add some little white dots for no purpose other than to disguise the smudges a little bit. And then we'll have to do some at the top, won't we, now? Just so it's a little bit more uniform. And just some here as well. There we go. So there's quite a lot of shimmer and sparkle on this. Just seems to be picking up much of the embossing more than shimmer and sparkle. But I think all that's left to do now is to mount it onto the card. So I'll start by mounting it onto I'll mount the, I've already applied the glue, so I'll mount the black onto the card first. Just concentrating on that. And then, oops. Then we'll pop this down onto there. I didn't gut the black today like I sometimes or often do. Sometimes I just like that little bit of extra weight to the card. It just adds a little bit of quality. Right, okay, that's held. Just remove the excess glue there. And then, as I did with the wings previously but was unhappy about, I'll now go in and add some sparkle overlay to the wings. Just running that over. In fact, it's wiping away some of the white highlight that or the white veining that I added on the wings. So I'll go in and add those back in again. I love this stuff. It's such a pretty kind of sparkle, a very subtle sparkle. Some sparkle can be a bit overpowering. So just picking up another pen because I think I may have just it's not going on because the overlay has added a moisture. You can just see it. It's fine. And there we go. All finished. Finito. So as before, as always, I will be removing this off of Facebook and then I'll pull it straight up onto YouTube. My YouTube channel, it's not the same one as as I use on a Monday. So it is designs_by_Danny_. Whoops, sorry, something's falling on my foot. There we go. So designs_by_Danny_. That's my YouTube for today's Wednesday Daytimes Makes. Otherwise on Facebook I am designs_ exactly the same actually. Not Facebook, Instagram. designs_by_Danny_. Might be a double underscore on there, I'm not too sure, you'll have to try. But there we go. So I will be back on Monday as Danny Doodles at 6 PM on the Chunky Monkey Crafts Facebook page. And I will see you then. Thank you very much for joining and I'll see you soon. Bye.